I start the stream, I want to say it's Wednesday, and it is the required weekly test. So hopefully it does not postpone due to the rain that I'm going to have. So it's just me all rain. And with that in mind, let's get it started with the countdown. In in 3, 2, 1, hit it. So just like that, the countdown is ended. So hey there, it is me once again, back with the Wednesday stream plus not Wednesday stream, Wednesday morning stream to be exact, but is a required weekly test stream. So I'm gonna wait until. Huh? No. I had the required weekly test. So I'm hoping that it is not postponed due to the rain that I'm gonna have. So what? What? At 8:32 a.m., Doppler radar indicated heavy rain across the Warren area. Wait, what? Between 4 and 6 inches of rain have fallen. Additional rainfall amounts of 0.5 to 1. Wait, what? A flash flood warning. Flash flooding is ongoing or expected to begin shortly. Hazard: flash flooding caused by heavy rain. Source: radar. Heavy rain. Impact: flash flooding of small creeks and streams, urban areas, highways, streets, and underpasses, as well as other. Yeah, so it's telling me that it's the same rain. Oh yeah, so this is the same rain for us. So so like at least it's actually like all rain, you know. I'm not talking to you. I am talking to my viewers. So anyway let me. So they will not test if there's flash flood warning. I think watch or warning. Let me see. I think that's like flash flood warning or watch or warning. Flash flooding. Okay. I just didn't read it. I mean, it depends. It depends on like.
Yeah, so that's why I came downstairs so early.
It depends on like what time. So like if they. Well, it's actually orange, so I think they're gonna do the test and then they're gonna do like the flash flood like after. Like I think that like the flash flood is not like severe or like anything. I mean, I think it is, but I don't know. So I'm not doing a gameplay of Tetris. I just wanted to let you know what's going on. So it says. So it's telling me it's saying rain at 10. So it's actually just gonna be rain. Yeah, so this is just rain. Yeah, so it's actually just rain for now. At least it's not thunderstorms. It's just rain, like rain and Wait. I'm trying to talk and no. Sorry for that interruption. I forgot to tell you that today is the first anniversary of a tropical storm Isaias hitting my area. Yep, today is the first anniversary of of tropical storm Isaias hitting my area. So I'm gonna make a community post about that. Hold on, just give me a moment here. Oh, come on, man. Just to give me a moment here. Let me. Yeah, no, I don't want any of this. Like, bro. I mean, if they do like a flash flood warning, like, earlier, that's what it is. Um, hold on. Let me see what this. Yes, this ain't area forecast discussion. So, like city, still zero. Gee, dang, still zero. Dang, it's on a streak here. Tropical storm is okay. Let's see. Yeah, so that's just August of 2020. No. Yeah, like it actually became like a tropical storm like later on. So yeah. Yeah, like it actually became like if it was the P40 that got the P40 axle braking system, decide fire, burning fuel. In the chaos, F40PHR 255's fuel tank ruptures and burning fuel leaks into the MARC coaches, setting them on fire, burning many of the MARC passengers alive or choking them with the toxic smoke from the fire. Passengers even furiously tried to bang the windows open, hoping to escape, but most of the time they wouldn't shatter. When morning breaks, the full scale of the disaster is seen. The marked cab car was almost split in half from the collision.
Jeez.
F40 PHR 255 was thrown to the side of the tracks with its rear end badly burned. P40 DC 811 was lightly damaged, while GP 39H-273 was almost flipped onto its side but still upright. Most of the Amtrak passengers were okay, but the same can't be said for the MARC passengers.
Oh gosh.
11 people died, including all 3 crew members in the MARC train who were in the cab car at the time. It's clear the MARC engineer disobeyed the signals, but the reason why still remains a mystery. Did he forget about the signal altogether? Was he suicidal? No one knows. But whatever the case, this was obviously human error. Obviously, people awed for automatic train braking systems such as positive train control, which could have helped prevented the accident. The accident also exposed a very bad design fault in the F40PH and other locomotives. Pure urgent care located
Oh my God, shut up, ad.
Form Swift. Just answer a few questions and Form Swift.
I don't care. I freaking hate ads. Jeez. 1972.
On the morning of March 24th, 1972,
What do you want to eat, Joshua?
35-year-old Joseph Larkin was driving a Nyack High School school bus past capacity downhill.
What?
The bus was filled with 48
What do you want to eat?
31 males and 17 females, with some passengers.
Oh my God, you gotta eat something because.
The bus in question was a 1967 Chevy Carpenter mounted on a 1968 GMC chassis. At the same time, Penn Central Manifest train W31 was on the former New York Central River Line going from Weehawken, New Jersey to Selkirk, New York Yard. The train was traveling at around 25 miles an hour and had 83 loaded cars, with 73 coming from the origin at Weehawken, plus 10 more picked up en route at Bergen. The train was led by Penn Central U25B 2653 and 2 other locomotives. Both the school bus and the freight train were heading toward the Gilchrist Railroad crossing, located in Congers, New York. The crossing was
Oh my God, I remember like I used the bathroom.
nothing else. These kind of crossings, though,
Alright. Have a turn.
Upward, causing the hopper to barely miss trees, and 66 people were unhurt. Buzzes to signify that the train comes in, and they're on a Paddington Station. A commuter train departs, collision, and other accidents across the globe, and sharing their stories. Survivors Group, bringing awareness to the survivor. This video is brought to you by the Paddington Survivors Group, bringing awareness to the survivors of the Paddington train collision and other accidents across the globe, and sharing their stories. Paddington Station. A commuter train departs, an express train comes in, and they're on a collision. Paddington Station. An express train comes in, and they're on a collision course. This is the tragic tale of the Paddington train collision, also known as the Ladbroke train crash. On October 5th, 1999, at 7:30, the 603 First Great Western Express from Cheltenham is making its way to Paddington. The train consisted of 8 Mark III coaches with
Joshua,
2
what do you want to eat?
class
Because you gotta eat something.
43011 leading
You
and 43018
you gotta eat something.
52-year-old driver Brian Cooper is in 43011's cab and has been with the railway for more than 30 years. He made his last stop before Paddington at Reading, 56 miles from
You have to
London,
eat something,
not too
Joshua.
long ago. Meanwhile, a Thames Trains commuter train bound for Bedford left platform 9 at Paddington Station. The train consisted of a 3-car turbo-class 165 diesel multiple unit set, for short, with set 165, 115 making up the train.
If you don't know what to eat, then
The
I'm
8967 is the leader, 55.
then I'll give you cereal.
Fine, I know what to eat. What the heck is going on? Whatever the heck is going on in there is too much fun. Whoa. Get that tornado. What's going on? Can't be able to tell why. Why looks like there's a tornado. This video is so scary. The 100 player game is completely a tornado. Where's the baby? Okay, babies. babies everywhere. Baby.
Injured, mainly suffering second and third degree burns. It is the deadliest crash on British rail in over a decade, and the worst Great Western since the Southall collision 2 years prior. What could have caused such a catastrophe? Did it share similarities with Southall? Investigators from the Health and Safety Committee discovered very intriguing factors. To start off, SM-109 wasn't amber at all. It was red. So why did the driver of the turboset not stop? Investigators ruled out suicide, sabotage, among other factors. So what could have happened? Well, the sun was glaring toward the signal, so there was only one factor left. It's called phantom signal, where something like a sun glare can create a false signal reading to the engineer, making him think it was amber, not red. To add insult to injury, Paddington Interlocking is quite crowded with overhead wires, signal bridges, wire bridges, among rail, or 4 light signals, all 4 lights stacked vertical. SM-109, however, was different. It was in a backwards L shape, with the red signal not being in the vertical set, but offset in the L. As the turboset passed by the signal, investigators concluded the engineer just couldn't see the signal properly, thinking it was a yellow or double yellow, when in reality it was red. But wasn't there a safety system to prevent this that had been in service since 1958? Well, there was. It's called AWS, or Automatic Warning System. It's a magnetic system that alerts drivers to any signal aspect. If the signal is green, a chime is heard. Any other aspect causes a horn to sound in the cab, and if the engineer does not acknowledge the warning, the emergency brakes are applied. AWS was functional in the turbo set, and the turbo driver did indeed acknowledge the warning. However, AWS had a major design flaw. It couldn't verify the difference between red signals and amber signals. So once the turbo set passed the red signal, disaster was inevitable. But there was still one more barrier that could have saved lives. Signalers who were monitoring the train's movements noticed the driver of the turbo set passed the red signal. They weren't worried at first. SM-120, a train crash, that is something not only rare, but is a kind of tragedy no one would dare to think about. Sadly, such horrific wrecks have involved 3 trains, like the Clapham Junction collisions. But many years before, there was a wreck just like Clapham, only 3 times more catastrophic. The day is October 8th, 1952. The location, Harrow and Wealdstone Station on the West Coast Main Line in the UK. At around 8:17 a.m., the 7:31 a.m. Trinity Euston local stopped at Platform 4 at Harrow and Wealdstone, approximately 7 minutes late due to fog. The train is led by LMS Fowler 264T, number 42-389, running bunker first. The engine was pulling 9 coaches and had around 800 passengers on board. It was busier than usual because the next Trinity Euston service had been canceled. As scheduled, it had traveled from Tring on the slow line, switching to the fast line just before Harrow to keep the slow lines to the south of the station clear for empty stop movements if needed. Meanwhile, the 8:15 p.m. Perth to Euston Night Express was making its way toward Harrow with 11 coaches carrying approximately 85 passengers, hauled by British Rail Coronation Class 462, number 46242, known as the City of Glasgow, running 1 hour, 20 minutes late, also due to the fog. Another train was coming the opposite way. It was the 8 a.m. express from Euston to Liverpool and Manchester, carrying 15 coaches with 200 people on board, and 2 steam engines were pulling it. British Rail number 45637, which was a Jubilee Class 460 named Windward Islands, and British Rail number 46202, a Princess Royal Class 462, called the Princess Anne. At 8:19 a.m., just as the guard of the local was walking back to his brake van after checking the doors on the last two carriages,
disaster struck.
50 to 60 miles per hour. The collision completely destroyed into the rear of the local at a speed of 80 to 100 kilometers an hour. That's 50 to... The Perth Express crashed into the rear of the local at a speed of 80 to 100 kilometers an hour. That's 50 to 60 miles per hour. The collision completely destroyed the three wooden coaches at the rear of the train where most of the casualties occurred, telescoping them into one another, and drove the entire train 20 yards forward. The leading two vans and three coaches of the Perth train then piled up behind and above the locomotive. Wreckage also blocked the adjacent down fast line, which was where the Liverpool Express was coming in. The leading locomotive of the Liverpool train struck the derailed locomotive of the Perth train and derailed, doing almost 60 miles an hour. Both engines of the Liverpool train then plowed across the platform before landing on their side on the adjacent DC electric main line, causing it to short circuit. The yellow line had its current quickly switched off by the signalman, thus preventing any further collisions with it. The leading 7 coaches, plus a kitchen car from the Liverpool train, were carried forward by the momentum, overriding the existing wreckage and piling up on top of it. Several of these coaches struck the underside of the station footbridge, tearing away at a steel girder. Rescuers soon arrive at 8:22 a.m. and find a scene of chaos. 3 trains have all smashed into each other and have piled up into a huge pile of wreckage, people, and bodies. The fire brigade, ambulance, and police services were being assisted by doctors and a medical unit from the United States Air Force, which were based 5 miles away at a Royal Air Force base called West Ruislip. Help was accepted from the Salvation Army, the Women's Voluntary Service, and local residents who were nearby when the crash occurred. The first loaded ambulance left at 8:27 a.m., and by 12:15 p.m., most of the injured were already in hospital. The search for survivors continued until 1:30 the following morning, where all they found were just bodies. 102 people died in the crash instantly, including the driver and fireman of the Perth Express,
Oh, jeez.
and the driver of the lead engine of the Liverpool Express. 10 more would later die in hospital, bringing the official death toll at 112.
Damn.
340 sustained very serious injuries of varying degrees, but were alive. The public demanded answers as to why the trains crashed. The Ministry of Transport did an investigation to find out what had happened. The local train should have been protected by 2 semaphore signals, one 190 yards away and the other 440 yards away. There was also one standard light signal much further away. Tests indicated the signals all worked as intended. On this section of track, the local trains had priority over the long-distance expresses during rush hour. So the Perth Express should have been expecting adverse signals warning him of locals occupying track ahead. However, it was soon found that the Perth Express was not aware of the signals. The Express had passed a colored light signal at yellow and 2 older semaphore signals at red. The train also forced its way through the back points on the crossover from the slow lines, which were still set for the local. So how did the driver miss them? Did he just ignore them because he was late? Well, while the fog had lifted in the vicinity of Harrow Station, with visibility improving for about 300 yards ahead, witnesses estimated that the up-fast distant track only had 50 to 100 yards visibility. So at 50 miles an hour, you'd only have 4 seconds to accurately read the signals. But then came one more factor that could have prevented disaster. Automatic Warning System, or AWS for short, was still in its developmental stages at the time of the wreck. AWS works by using a magnetic sensor to read signal aspects via ramps on the track bed, triggering the display in the cab,
Oh, wow.
nicknamed the sunflower dial. If the signal is green, a chime is sounded. If it's a yellow or red, a horn is heard in the cab, and if nothing happens, the train goes into emergency stop. This could have prevented disaster, as even though the fog partially obscured the signal, AWS would have warned the engineer of the signal aspect, and the crew would know to slow down and stop. Roads at the time said such a system was too costly to install at the time, but after Harrow, development was accelerated, and by accident, little was left of British Rail 45637, having taken the brunt of the impact when hitting 46242, and was scrapped. 46202 was also scrapped, as its pilot wheels were ripped from the frame, and the frame itself was dented. Both 45637 and 46202's nameplates were acquired by the Doncaster Grammar School Railway Society and remained at the school on display. 46242, the city of Glasgow, was rebuilt and remained in service until being retired in 1963 and being cut up at Crewe Works.
Hey.
42389 was undamaged, but was retired in 1963 and also scrapped. 13 coaches, 2 bogie vans, and a kitchen car were destroyed or severely damaged in the collisions. Experts criticized the local layout of the track. The train had to wait on the fast line to keep the length of the rods between the points and the signal box down. The junction between the slow and fast lines lay beyond the station. The junction was then changed to make it safer in 1962.
Like
So when in
62.
doubt, just say, let me talk to my manager.
Next, Carvana's 100,000s. The Bud Silverliner 2s.
Oh no.
It's the early 2000s. The Bud Silverliner 2s and St. Louis Car Company Silverliner 3s have been running since the 1960s, but they have become more problematic due to their age and lack of ADA compliance. In 2005, SEPTA placed an order for 120 new Silverliner 5s from Hyundai Rotem to replace the aging Silverliners. However, design delays, bidding disputes, and a new plant needing to be set up in South Philadelphia delayed delivery until 2010, keeping the older
2010.
cars in service for 5 more years despite their issues. To add insult to injury, on November 3rd, 2009, TWU Local 234, the workers' union for the SEPTA Suburban District, went on strike. This was the first strike led by union president Willie Brown, known as the most hated man of Philly. He and the union argued for higher wages, operator hours, amongst other things. This caused service on the Market Frankfurt line, Broad Street line, most Center City bus routes, and all trolleys to be suspended, except for routes 101, 102, and 100, also known as the Norristown High Speed Line. This caused an outrage amongst SEPTA commuters, with most having to pile up onto regional rail to get to work. This quickly caused SEPTA trains to become overcrowded, having to deadhead to Center City once full. This caused a serious strain on the Silverliners, including the older Silverliner 2s and 3s. This was the last thing these cars needed. Despite this, SEPTA still managed to keep the trains moving on day 1 until the very next day. November 4th, 2009. It has been officially 1 day since the strike had started. A morning SEPTA R5 commuter train was running from Thorndale to Center City, consisting of mainly older Silverliner 2s led by car 257, a former Pennsylvania Railroad car made in the 1960s. As the train made its way to Overbrook, passengers and a conductor started smelling something burning, much like burning trash. Then smoke began to appear from car 257. Fearing an onboard fire, conductors ordered everyone in 257 to move into their rearmost cars. Others, not wanting any part of it, got off at Overbrook Station, fearing a disaster. The train managed to leave Overbrook, but it didn't get far. Just south of the station, around 52nd and Lancaster, right by the Overbrook maintenance facility, the smoke got worse. The engineers stopped the train and everyone was evacuated right before fire started shooting out the windows of the car. The operator bailed out of the side of the car long before the cab and the front end of the car were engulfed in flames.
Jeez.
At first, reports stated one person died in the burning car, but soon it was confirmed everyone made it out safely without incident due to the quick thinking of the conductors. Passengers, however, were faced with another disaster. The first disaster was 257 catching fire.
Have you seen this Space Aid roofing product that lowers energy bills without solar panels?
A mountain in the high torrid range of the central. The Kitzsteinhorn, a mountain in the high torrid range of the central eastern Alps in Kaprun, Austria. It is known to be a popular attraction for skiers, as the mountain is over 3,203 meters tall, with ice that rarely melts, making skiing possible almost any time of the year. However, this haven for skiers was also the site of a hellish experience many will never forget.
$20.
On November 11th, 2000, skiers crowd toured Kaprun for the opening day of the winter sports season. To get up to the mountain, skiers can choose between a cable car or a high-speed funicular, yet simple system.
I ate pancakes.
There's two trains, each one balancing the other. There's no central prime mover in the train itself, or fuel, just the conductor in the cab to open and shut the doors. At the top station, a powerful electric pulley system pulls the trains up and down the 30-degree incline at 25 kilometers an hour, or 16 miles an hour. The train, called the Glacierbahn Kaprun 2, or Glacier Railway Kaprun 2, opened in 1974 and was an instant success. It had an unusual track gauge of 946 millimeters, or 3 feet by 1 1/4 inch.
Dang.
In 1993, it was modernized, adding a restaurant and shopping mall at the top station, and new train cars were installed, giving the train a more futuristic look. The train consists of 2 coaches and has 2 cabs on each end of the train for the conductor to use. It can carry a total of 180 passengers. While this train enjoys a perfect safety record for 7 years, little does anyone know that this new design holds a deadly design flaw. At 8:57 a.m., 161 passengers climb into the funicular for the uphill journey. Among them, some of the top skiers, such as Sandra Schmidt, a 19-year-old German freestyle skier who earned a gold medal for Germany during the 1999 Freestyle World Ski Championships, Sebastian Geiger, a junior champion skier for Germany who's just 14, and Joseph Schapper, a deaf alpine skier who represented Austria at the Deaf Olympics in 1987, 1995, and 1999, winning 7 medals, including a gold. There's also United States Army Major Michael Goodridge with his wife Jennifer and sons Michael, who's 7, and Kyle, who's 5. They board the train, not giving a second thought of what is about to happen. The downhill train, however, only has 2 people, the conductor and 1 lone passenger. At 9:02 a.m., the trains are underway. Control room staff keep an eye on the trains and their movements.
How's about to happen?
The uphill train first crosses a 600-meter ravine before entering a tunnel that climbs through the mountain. Seconds in the trip, however, there's already trouble. Skier Thomas Kraus has an uneasy feeling. He spots a small whiff of smoke seep in from the empty rear cab. In interviews, he says it was like from a cigarette after being put down. Quickly, the smoke intensifies, and the passengers at the back go from concerned to terrified. To add insult to injury, there are no smoke alarms anywhere in the train to alert the conductor or control, and the fire extinguishers are sealed off in the cabs, away from passengers. One passenger even tries a desperate 122 call to the fire brigade on his cell phone. Others bang on the windows trying to attract people for help, but it's futile. Then another stroke of bad luck. At 9:04, the train enters the tunnel, cutting off all cell phone signals, and the conductor and control still don't know about the smoke, as the conductor is more than 50 meters away from the back of the train, and some passengers up front are oblivious to the crisis unfolding. 1 minute later, the train suddenly stops 600 meters into the tunnel. Control contacts the conductor to find out what's wrong, but he's just as confused. He didn't halt the train. The rear coach is filling with smoke, and flames are quickly growing out of control all over the rear of the train. With no emergency door release or emergency windows, the passengers in the rear compartment, desperate for escape, use their ski poles to break the windows themselves, as the doors won't budge. Finally, the attendant spots the fire, and control orders him to open the doors. But at the exact moment the order to open the doors is given, the radio on the train dies when a 16 kilovolt wire parallel to the tracks is burned off from the fire, causing a blackout throughout the ski resort.
Oh boy.
Finally, the 2 layers of shock-proof plexiglass on the windows breaks, and the passengers in the rear section dive out of the train, with some having flames already surrounding them. But in other compartments, passengers are still trapped but quickly succumb to the smoke. The lucky few that do escape, though, are still in trouble, as the tunnel is coated in toxic smoke. There's 2 options: go up the tunnel, away from the fire, or downward, past the fire. Volunteer firefighter Torsten Gradler, who was on the train, has 25 years experience.
25
His
years.
instincts tell him to head down, and he yells toward the other passengers to follow him. Thankfully, the emergency stairs are parallel to the tracks, which should help with the escape, but walking down them in ski boots makes the task extremely difficult, and the narrow, steep stairs only make the task even harder. Meanwhile, smoke reaches the upper station and the shopping mall. Employees quickly evacuate the station and mall. The conductor of the train on fire finally gets the doors manually released, and the passengers, still conscious, dive out of the train. Firemen and rescuers quickly respond, but firemen bail out the first rescue attempt due to excessive heat and possibility the cables holding the train could snap, sending the train running away backwards down the steep slope.
Uh-oh.
Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Torsten and the 11 other skiers that followed him emerge out of the tunnel, exhausted but alive. The fire burns for nearly 3 more hours, and the firemen make their way down the tunnel when it burned itself out. All but 4 people die in the upper station. The sister train that was heading downhill was blackened with smoke. Inside are the bodies of the conductor and his lone passenger. When firemen find the burned out train, they are horrified. They find it almost totally melted, with just the frame charred and bent. The track is warped and twisted. The charred bodies of the people overcome by smoke and flames are found inside the burned out hulk, or found in spots not far uphill from the train. In total, 155 are dead, including Michael Goodrich and his family, Joseph Shapar, Sebastian Geiger, along with 3 members of his group, plus their coaches, and Sandra Smith, along with her parents. The attendant of the train that was on fire also dies. Some bodies are so badly burned to the point where identification was only possible by DNA cross-matched with samples from the victims' toothbrushes and razors found in their home. Types of machinery man has ever created.
Wow.
Some say all their sounds make you feel like they were living beasts within a steel jacket. A steam locomotive works like this. Fuel is put into the firebox and burns to create
I'm still
heat.
here, y'all. I'm
This
just
fuel can be either
being
coal,
silent
oil, or even
for a
wood.
while.
The smoke is channeled through the funnel or the smokestack. In the boiler, there's water, usually provided by the tender, and when the water gets heated by the heat of the firebox, it turns into steam. The steam then gathers up into the steam dome, and when the engineer pulls the throttle, a valve in the steam dome is lifted, and the steam trickles into the piston chamber. The steam forces the pistons back, and when it reaches the edge, the pressure pushes the piston the other way. The piston also moves the connecting rods on the drive wheels, and the train moves. The used steam is then shot up the funnel along with the firebox smoke, creating the famous chuffing sound associated with steam locomotives. While they may sound very simple to operate, steam locomotives need careful care, and you need to maintain a perfect balance of steam pressure, heat, and water. And even today, thousands of steam locomotives have been preserved, with several of them in running order on tourist railroads or operating on the main line on special excursions.
What's this?
However, there would be one accident that would change steam locomotive preservation forever.
September 26th.
So when in doubt, just say, let me
Oh,
talk.
come on, man.
Next, Carvana's 100% online.
Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, June 16th, 1995. Not far from the site of the famous Civil War battle lies the Gettysburg Railroad. Running from Gettysburg to Biglerville, this former Reading Railroad line had a heater pump in the. Believe it or not, this was a routine procedure of Gettysburg. Already, there was the first sign of danger. A check valve between the feed water heater pump and the boiler had been leaking all day, even though the valve was recently replaced.
Alright.
On the previous trip that day, when 1278 was running backward next to a double-tiered open-air observation car, the spray from the leaking check valve required that the top half of the car leak. Consequently, according to the first fireman when the train left Wolf Pit, the feed pump was shut off. The feed water heater is a heat exchanger located in the front of the locomotive, usually in the smoke box. The steam exhausted from the cylinders is used to preheat water from the tender before the water is pumped into the boiler. This boosts efficiency and lowers fuel usage. The second fireman testified that when he relieved the first fireman, the feed pump was still off. The second fireman said he then turned the feed pump on all the way. When both firemen were later asked how they could tell whether the feed pump was working or not, they both said that the sound and visual movement of the feed pump rod told them that it was working. Both firemen felt that such cues were normal and sufficient to ensure that the water was flowing into the boiler. However, it would later be revealed that this was not the correct procedure. Both firemen stated that they checked the water glass frequently during the trip, which would indicate how much water is left in the boiler. The first fireman stated that he always checked the water glass, and the second fireman said he checked it once every 5 minutes or so. He also said that the engineer leaned back in his seat to check the water glass about 3 times during the trip. Neither fireman noted anything unusual about the level of the water in the glass. They said that it appeared to be normal and that it would fluctuate between half to a full inch, which they considered normal considering the grade of the track and the vibrations. At Pond Road at milepost 18, the second fireman relieved the first, and about a mile later at 7 p.m. at Gardner's, while the train was moving at approximately 15 miles an hour, disaster struck.
Ooh.
1278 suffers a backdraft explosion in the firebox. Scalding steam and flames burned the 3 crew members badly, with the engineer suffering the worst, as he had burns over 60% of his body. When the train stopped, the engineer managed to get down out of the locomotive cab by himself, and he laid on the ground. He was then helped by the firemen and other members of the train crew. Ambulances arrived minutes later to take them to area hospitals. The first fireman, who had immediately left the locomotive cab by the doorway, had second and third degree burns over 10% of his body. He was taken to the hospital in Gettysburg and was later transferred to York for a week. His recovery took about 1.5 months. The second fireman also had second and third degree burns on both his legs, arms, and chest, and had fractured legs when he jumped through the locomotive cab window. Thankfully, none of the crew were killed, and the passengers on the train escaped serious injury, all 100 of them. 1278 suffered major damage to its firebox area, but the rest of the locomotive was fine. The crown sheet toward the front of the locomotive next to the rear tube sheet knuckle had bulged downward a maximum of about a foot in a bag shape that covered an area encompassing about 60 crown stays.
Okay.
The crown sheet holes around the crown stays have been deformed and elongated, creating gaps about the crown stay heads. The crown sheet knuckle next to the flue sheet had a 6-inch tear, and also 2 front right firebox grate panels of the firebox floor had broken and fallen onto the ash pan below. An investigation quickly revealed that the crown sheet overheated due to low water levels, but it would soon be discovered that this accident was more than just an engine not having enough water. 1278 was found to be poorly maintained, from an air compressor that sounded like an asthmatic cow, to exterior rust on the drive wheels, not to mention the fact that many gauges were removed and not replaced, including the one that indicated water flow to the feed water pump.
Oh,
The
goodness.
engineer told the NTSB that he had removed the original feed pump gauge after it had failed, and the replacement also failed, so he didn't bother replacing it with a third one. As for the gauges still left on the engine, they were mostly, in fact, wrong, particularly the water glass. The water glass is a simple gauge that indicated how much water is left in the boiler. The first issue was the water glass light was not working, a violation of railroad regulations of steam locomotive operation. The second was the crew thought the water was at an acceptable level, even though the water glass level changed by only half an inch, which should have indicated something was wrong. Normal fluctuations are normally between 2 to 4 inches, and the fluctuations can also be present depending on track conditions. When the water glass was removed, the NTSB's suspicions were correct. The water glass pipes and valves were obstructed by almost 85% of solid scale, blocking the water flow to indicate the correct water levels. Plus, not many of the employees of the railroad, including the crew on board that day, knew how to properly blow down the water glass, a procedure that would highlight issues, including a clog in the water glass pipes. Only the owner of the Gettysburg Railroad, the engineer's father, demonstrated the correct method of blowing the glass down. All the Gettysburg Passenger Service employees have been taught by the engineer. No one said that he also tested the gauge cocks when he blew down the water glass, as required by regulations. The NTSB therefore concluded that the firemen did not know because they had not been properly taught how to blow down the water glass or test the gauge cocks. The lack of knowledge about such basic procedures reflects.
Okay.
Do you love boating? Well, Freedom Boat Club makes boating easier than ever.
One of the worst ways to end.
Oh boy.
Suicide is certainly one of the worst ways to end one's life.
Yep.
And little do some know, when you kill yourself or try to kill yourself, it affects more people than you would think. Several people would find this out on one January morning. On January 26, 2005, Metrolink train 100 was running southbound toward Los Angeles Union Station. The train consisted of Bombardier bi-level cab car 625, coach 133, coach 197, and F-59 PHI 886, with the cab car leading. Headed the opposite direction was Metrolink train 901, consisting of F-59 PH 873, coach 177, coach 148, and cab car 623, with 873 leading. Also in the Glendale siding, known as the Slide, was
Well,
a
this is also
Union
when
Pacific ballast train consisting of UP
Kobe died.
SD70M 4323,
Actually, well, yeah.
CEFX FSD40-2 3160. The ballast run was waiting its turn to deliver track ballast to repair tracks on the former Southern Pacific coastline, which had been washed out by major storms earlier. The two Metrolinks were due to meet each other at Glendale, California, on their way to their respective destinations, while the Union Pacific would slip through onto the main after the Metrolinks cleared the block. When suddenly, a Jeep Cherokee Sport vehicle parks itself on the tracks south of the Chevy Chase Drive Railroad crossing and near a Costco retail store. Inside the car is Juan Manuel Alvarez. The engineer of Train 100 quickly notices this and immediately throws the train into emergency braking, but there was no way disaster could be avoided.
Let's find out if the train was still upright.
Metrolink Train 100 slams into the Jeep at 6:03 a.m. Train 100 pushes the Jeep southward along the track toward the Los Feliz Boulevard crossing until parts of the Jeep strike a track switch and became lodged under the cab car of the Metrolink train, raising it up and causing the train to derail. Cars from the derailed Train 100 quickly jackknife, hitting both the UP SD70M on the stationary ballast train, toppling it over on its side and sideswiping the rear of the passing northbound 901 Metrolink train. This causes the rear cars of the northbound train to derail and the rear cab car's coupling to snap, making the whole car fall on its side. The remainder of Train 901's consist continued a short distance with the brakes on emergency after the cab car separates, and some derailed coaches hit a signal gantry, making it fall on the rearmost coach car. A fire involving one or more passenger cars was caused by the spilled diesel fuel from the Union Pacific locomotive. Among the first responders to the accident were employees of the Costco store adjacent to the accident site, who placed calls to 911 and climbed the perimeter fence to aid the victims, pulling out survivors and using fire extinguishers until first responders arrived. About 300 firefighters, helicopters, and cadaver dogs were brought to the crash site in order to help locate individuals trapped in the wreckage or locate bodies. 11 people perished in the wreckage. 117 were injured. One survivor, John Phipps, was made famous due to a Daily News photograph of his farewell to his family and high school sweetheart, which was written in his own blood on the sideways cab car, saying,
I love my kids. I love Leslie.
One survivor would later die in the 2008 Chatsworth collision just a few years later. The National Transportation Safety Board investigated the accident while the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen Safety Task Force assisted them.
This
Criminal
was brutal.
investigation was led by the Glendale Police Department, along with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the Union Pacific Police Department, who owned the tracks. All blame was clearly on the Jeep driver. Alvarez, who was employed as a handyman in the Los Angeles suburb of Compton, California, was allegedly suicidal for a long time before the incident occurred. According to some reports, he had attempted suicide in the past, and to add to that, he was a known methamphetamine addict, prone to delusional behavior. At the time of his incident, Alvarez was a father of 2 young children and was experiencing marital difficulties. His wife, Carmelia Ocha, filed a restraining order against him months before the incident, claiming he had become erratic and threatening to her and their children, and extremely controlling.
What?
He had slit his wrists and had stabbed himself multiple times before getting into his Jeep and parking it on the tracks, hoping to get hit and instantly killed. However, he decided to change his mind last minute, but it was already too late to drive the Jeep off the tracks. He bailed out of his Jeep just seconds before the train hit his car. After standing by watching the carnage unfold, Alvarez fled the scene, but was later found at a friend's house in Backwater Village, Los Angeles. He was arrested.
Oh, I'm out there. How are you? Who's it for?
Such as a copycat incident that happened just one day after the Glendale crash in Irene, California. Only the driver, Joe Cobb, reported hit, and the police arrived and later arrested him. There was also the Hoofdon Mirabit rail crash in the UK, which occurred only 3 months previously, although in that case, the driver of the car stayed in the vehicle and was instantly killed when struck. There were also many other cases with this kind of suicide intent, such as this incident, where the Norfolk Southern hit this hatchback in the rear of a suicidal driver. On June 26, 2008, Alvarez was found guilty of 11 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances and 1 count of arson related to the incident. Why the arson charge? Well, the diesel fuel fire from the locomotive. He was acquitted of the train charge. 1 month later, on July 7, 2008, the hearing for the sentence of Alvarez started. The jury chose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and on August 20th, Alvarez was sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole and was imprisoned at Kern Valley State Prison. While Alvarez got loads of attention for his botched suicide attempt, even if that was what he was looking for, the wreck caused intense attention to the train configuration. Many commuter trains are pushed in the back by the locomotive in a so-called push-pull configuration. Metrolink trains are no exception, especially when returning to Los Angeles Union Station. In this configuration, the lighter cab car leads and the locomotive pushes at the rear. This allows for fast turnarounds at stations with no need for runarounds. as the cab car has the same exact controls the locomotive would have. There was criticism that the configuration made the accident much worse, as people stated that if the heavier locomotive service, the cab cars of both Metrolink trains and some of the past 3323, the only damaged locomotive in the wreck, was repaired and returned to service. Unknown if this would prevent the derailment, however. In the end, UP 4323, the only damaged locomotive in the wreck, was repaired and returned to service. The cab cars of both Metrolink trains and some of the passenger cars were, however, deemed too damaged to repair and scrapped. 16 years since the derailment, the memories of that dreadful day will still haunt survivors forever. I'd like to take a moment to bring awareness to a serious problem. I know a lot of my users who watch my videos, as well as people in general, struggle with depression. I know I suffer it myself. Whether it may be because of bullies, death in the family, relationship issues, whatever, this can sometimes lead to thoughts of ending it all. But I'm here to tell you, suicide affects more people than you would think. You'd think no one would care or miss you after you killed yourself? I'm afraid to say the truth is always the opposite. I know from experience, as I myself have contemplated and nearly committed suicide several times in my younger years. Obviously not involving getting hit by a train, but either way, I never followed through because I was just scared of what could happen or what I could miss out on. Here's the thing. No matter how bad a situation can be, it'll always get better. If you ever are struggling with depression, reach out to someone. There's so many sources out there to help you. There's always another way. I'm always willing to listen to those that want to talk about their struggles, and I'm sure people watching this would also be willing to help those struggling as well. You can also call the Suicide Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or use their online chat. Help is always available for you. You are never alone.
If you're that depressed, reach out to someone. And remember, suicide is a permanent solution to temporary problems. Permanent solution to temporary problems.
Suicide is never the answer.
While holding tons of history behind it, such as being the oldest original township in New Jersey, being granted a royal charter on June 1st, 1669, by King Charles II of England. But one evening, the town's name would be etched into history forever, having the deadliest train wreck in the history of New Jersey occur here. This would be known as the Wreck of the Broker. Around 5 p.m. on Tuesday, February 6, 1951, Pennsylvania Railroad Express train number 730 getting in or out of number of injured truck from the remains of the rails on the catastrophe. An hour, twice as fast than it should have been.
Joe Barton here, and there are 3 drinks that you might think are healthy,
Drew
but
Boogie's
are
after,
absolutely crippling you from the
I think I saw
inside
this
out.
already. I did.
When both trains finally caught sight of one another nearby Front Street Railroad crossing, they both sounded their horns and whistled an alarm and hit their brakes, but there was no time to prevent a disaster. With passengers heading to work, or just helping people get around the area. Occasionally, commuter trains, and passenger trains in general, share tracks with freight trains,
Yeah, this is
whether
what we
they were
said.
small locals serving businesses or big, slow mainline freights going from one major yard to another, sometimes traveling from state to state. Of course, procedures exist to prevent these trains from bumping into each other, and train crews are given orders letting them know about other traffic. Plus, you had signals, of course, to let crews know if the track's clear, and sidings and multi-track mains for trains to wait or
this is
pass
more
one
recent.
another. Nowadays, it's much easier to space apart trains with modern computers and safety systems, but back then, it wasn't so easy. And if a crew didn't follow those orders and procedures, disaster would occur, especially one incident in July of 1940 when a self-propelled passenger car collided head-on with a mainline freight train. This would be known as the Doodlebug disaster.
The Doodlebug. 81 years later.
Let's rewind the clock nearly 100 years ago. Branch line passenger service had become a serious financial issue for all railroads in the early 1900s. The Pennsylvania Railroad was no exception to this. Long before the invention of cars and buses, the Pennsylvania Railroad began experimenting with self-propelled cars, which could operate by themselves without a separate locomotive and without a full crew.
Yeah, I actually saw
Plus,
this.
with a cab on each end, turnarounds would be twice as easy without the need of a turntable or a Y track to turn the locomotives around. Plus, since passenger trains on some branches were rather low, it was inefficient to run a locomotive with a small set of coaches when they were barely full. After nearly 20 years of experimentation with various trolley lookalikes, the Pennsylvania Railroad finally turns its attention to the gasoline rail car, or Doodlebug, which was a universal term on American railroads for these kind of rail cars that carried passengers along with their own prime mover. From the late 1920s to the 1930s, the Pennsylvania Railroad purchased a series of these self-propelled gas-electric cars built by various companies, such as Electromotive Corporation, which later became Electromotive Diesel, or EMD for short, and the Philadelphian manufacturer J.G. Brill, the same company that made the famous Bullet cars for the Philadelphia and Western. Most of the time, the cars would run by themselves, but on occasion, later east, it would change the history of the Doodlebugs and future self-propelled cars forever. On July 31st, 1940, Pennsylvania Railroad Doodlebug 4648 was traveling from Hudson, Ohio, south to Akron on the Cleveland Division on its usual 25-mile commuter run on a warm summer evening with 46 people aboard, stopping at stations like Cayuga Falls, Stowe, and Kent on the way. The car in question was a 1928 build from Pullman and Electromotive Corporation, classed as a GEW 275A, the G standing for Gas Electric Prime Mover, the E standing for Electric Drivetrain, the W for the two Westinghouse traction motors, 275 for the horsepower rating, and the A denoting the series letter. 49-year-old Thomas L. Murtaugh was the engineer, and 57-year-old H.B. Schaefer was the conductor. 24-year-old Todd Wan was the brakeman. At the same time, a mixed freight train was heading north from Columbus to Cleveland. It departed Arlington Station in Akron around the same time the 4648 left Hudson, and was traveling around 35 miles per hour. The train was led by a pair of I-1SA Class 210 decapods, number 4454 and 4533, pulling around 74 cars. Nicknamed hippos due to their huge boilers, they were known to be slow, but having a lot of pull, with a tractive effort of 102,027 pounds by force. O.M. Lodge was the chief engineer of the doubleheader freight, with B.E. Reynolds as his fireman. Now, the Doodlebug was scheduled to pull into a siding at Silver Lake to allow the freight train to pass through the opposite way on the single-track section at that point. However, for some reason, the bug proceeded past the siding without stopping and was heading straight into the path of the freight train. The conductor of the freight train, R.E. Collier, had a written order notifying him that the Doodlebug was taking the siding at switch 3. Little did he know the Doodlebug was heading straight towards him at 40 miles an hour. When both trains finally caught sight of one another nearby Front Street Railroad crossing, they both sounded their horns and whistled an alarm and hit their brakes, but there was no time to prevent a disaster.
Nope. Nope.
The trains collide head-on at 6 p.m. at a combined speed of 55 miles an hour. The lead decapod pushed the Doodlebug 300 feet northward down the track and telescoped 12 feet into the Doodlebug, instantly penetrating.
Wow. That was brutal.
Few things put your daily life on hold. Summer is heating up outside. Don't let AC.
Not really.
If you're from around here.
Oh my god, 3 guys? Yeah. That crash was brutal, not even gonna lie. Yeah, that crash was brutal. Rain. Rain. Yeah, I think that crash was really brutal.
And then there's this. I sit there. Those are squirter juice box. After shrunken head, spider eggs, as usual.
Interesting. Well, like the cinnamon dish of the mole men from Mars. What? Welcome to Lake Bottom Macaroni Lake. Our tradition.
Yeah, since when?
Let's see. Since super awesome movie stars started coming to our camp. So, today?
Could you give it a rest?
Oh, don't worry. We're used to it, dear. Make sure to get my
Where is that music coming from?
and sound system added to our formal.
Okay, Reg, what is the deal here?
You're embarrassing us in front of your parents.
Oh, what will you tell us?
Oh, come on, Greg. It's what you live for your parents' movies. Like Double Blind Up Shark Tank 4 or Double Blind Up Shark Tank 5, The Resharking. Come on. All classics. The giant shark versus human shark.
Sorry. Personally, I can't stand all that Hollywood nonsense.
Oh, nonsense. What are you saying? Well, that's what you get for invading the lighthouse. Now that's respect. You know that shark had a black belt in Taiwan dorsal?
Wow, that Shark Tank 5 was just a movie. And you don't talk about real people stuff for once.
Greg, we talked about this. Stop giving your father frown lines. I didn't know you better. I think you didn't want to visit.
You mean parents?
Well, that's exactly what I said.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Someone called for parent participation. Straight here.
Buy my own clothes.
Right there, Reg. Wow! That was just like Steve Dickens' big party picnic. Man, best pancake in Lincoln.
Yeah, honestly, I think that was brutal. He just took.
Weather situations, specially built receivers can be automatically activated by the signal to warn of the impending hazard. Tests of the signal and receiver performance are normally conducted by the National Weather Service at 11 a.m. each Wednesday. If there is a threat of severe weather, the test will be postponed to the next available good weather day. Reception of this broadcast, and especially the warning alarm, will vary at any given location. This variability, normally more noticeable at greater distances from the transmitter, can sometimes occur even though you are using
Oh, so
a
it's a Virginia.
receiver in good working order.
So it's not for us.
To provide the most consistent and dependable warning service
Not
possible,
important.
the warning alarm will be activated for hazardous watches and warnings for the following counties in southeast New York: Bronx, Kings, Nassau, New York, Orange, Putnam, Queens, Richmond, Rockland, Suffolk, and Westchester. In northern and central New Jersey: Bergen, Essex, Hudson, Huntington, Middlesex, Monmouth, Morris, Passaic, Somerset, Sussex, Union, and Warren. And in southwest Connecticut, Fairfield. Once again, this was only a test.
So actually, they actually did require a liquid test. So. Anyways, I probably should go upstairs then. Yeah, they might do the test like a little earlier. As once, oh, I'm worried the gamer and I'm lower 2000. Alright, I might as well just go upstairs. Let's just go upstairs. No. Wait. No, I should wait. Oh my god. Alright. Hello there, I just read the chat already. I'm waiting until 11:30, so hopefully. God bless. What?
Go upstairs and do that. Okie
Alright, wake up the Juan. We'll beat you, boy. In 5 seconds.
Get it? Text a message, I don't know the number. Listen on these niggas, every bone muscle. Steady taking shots, never hurting them. Even then, y'all don't worry nothing. And I like to give a shout out to my niggas with the game plan. And shout out to my niggas with escape plans. 20 bands, rain dance. We can keep the rain checking, we can make plans. Pockets loaded, rockin'. Yeah, that sounds good, but I gotta go upstairs. Go upstairs. Quiet. Alright. So I'm upstairs. I gotta wait for the recovery test to come in. How am I doing? I'm doing good.
Alright guys, welcome back to my channel again. And this is actually going to be another red card video. And joining me for this is one on station 87. But according to a tip that Aubrey had sent me, I had a little bit of mixed feelings about this, but now I have to take a stand at this, and it's come to my attention that this user is not getting the picture, like Aubrey told me just before we went on camera. I regret to say that is the correct answer. So folks, this red card is going to Nate J 2100, or you might know him as Nate the Movie Man 2012, even though he shut down his channel. And the reason why Nate has gone from a permanent yellow card to a red card is, like I said, is because of the tip that Aubrey had told me. Aubrey, would you like to say it? With pleasure, my friend. Okay, let me just point my camera at you. Okay. Not a problem. Okay. As many of you know, Nate J 2100 or Nate the Man 2000 had a of constantly asking myself and other users why I kept shutting down my older accounts.
Hey there, Airwolf.
And Nate has never confirmed that maybe I did not wish to discuss that information. Good evening, YouTubers, and welcome back to the Matthew 1688 Studios on this Wednesday, October 15th, 2014. Not very far away from the end of the year. I got a message. But anyways, this is Stephen Jones. I'll talk to him later. But anyways, I have 4 Skype guests with me. And this is the first time I've had to do this kind of video in a while. But first of all, I'm going to introduce my 4 Skype guests. First of all, we have Aces 90 around the button. And for the first time ever, we have Anthony Lopez. I'm not sure what this is going to be. Okay. We also have Radio on Station 87. Broadcasting to you from Minneapolis, Texas. Finally, is Steve Zabrowski on Facebook. And I feel like this is worthy of me doing a red card video on this person. And this is the first time I've had to do a red card video in quite a while. So, yes, it has to be done for sure. Stephen Toad just called me. I'll turn it down. But anyways, get in the kitchen early. He hasn't solved the puzzle yet.
Go to the kitchen and make your sandwich.
Get in the kitchen, order me a pizza.
I think this has gone far enough. Surely you understand what I'm trying to say to you. It's good to speak your mind sometimes, but what are you doing? It's gonna take that into me. You're so old! Now when you take a shower, you get brain water. Yourself? I take nothing. I think this has gone far enough. Surely you understand what I'm trying to say.
Obviously, this loading again.
Hey, you want pause? That's cheating!
Guest with me, and they are Alan Burns and Marvin Ford.
Alright, so I gotta wait until it's...
I think looking the best because we've already had breakfast, but you still have dinner to look forward to. A plastic magic wand! Sweet! Make a wish! I wish I had 6 eyes.
Okay, we're rolling. Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to the Matthew BC 1688 studio.
Maybe you have to wait.
14, and I have an audience of 10 people on here. A total of 10 people. And I have Mikey Batten. We also got Corey Lawrence. Trying to get Gary Newkirk. We have Gary on here, Gary Newkirk, but apparently we might have lost him, so okay. We also have Nick Bishop. Even though the border college is not very he's right at this moment. No, apparently neither of us are. We also have Steve Zabrowski. And next is Justin Bowling. And we also have Rodney Flippin. Craig Simmons, or Craig S. 1996 television. No. And we also have Ben Spinden. Now this was originally a 2-in-1 video, but this time I'll 3-in-1 thanks to but this is the first thing that I'm gonna get to. The first thing I'm gonna get to is this. I've had to issue a red card to a user. I know Justin has also issued him a red card, and so has Rodney. And Justin, would you like to say the name of this user? The user in which that we're talking about that red card along with Matthew here is Stephen Parker. That is correct. And the reason why we have also have Kyle KMH Reserves 1 on here. But anyways, sorry about that. I might have forgotten.
How is it? 11:23.
But hey,
Because of this. Juwan, I came not too long ago. Yeah. Mom went to work.
She's gone.
anyways, the reason why Stephen Barker is on a yellow, not a yellow, but a red card with us is because he told us that we owed Mark LG for red carding him. And then he even told Justin that he does not deserve to be red carded or yellow carded because he's a subscriber. And Justin, do you have something to say about that? Anything to say about that? Yeah, do you? All I gotta say is that was pathetic. Because, I mean, not only because of that, but also Rodney attempted to get in touch with him on a Google Hangout, and apparently I
Yes.
was a witness to that. Yeah, but you know what? You should bring up that subject when we're talking about another subject, Mr. Baker. He's too fucking retarded. He's too fucking retarded to even realize what the fuck's going on. Well said, Mikey. I don't think he's retarded at all. We call him like retarded because I might have said very.
Yeah.
Sometimes we ever sneezed. Like I was saying earlier, well, anyways, like I was saying earlier, sometimes we ever sneezed. Like I was saying earlier, Stephen Parker, you are on a red card with us, and you are not going to get off no matter how much you beg us. Because as far as we can tell, you do not deserve to get in touch with any one of us. And all I can say is, you should be ashamed of yourself. Exactly. actually. Okay, go ahead. This is something that I want to address. These plagiarizers aren't plagiarizing what other people say in their videos just to make them into his own. If you're that, what is usually called plagiarism? Exactly.
What? What? Alright, I should probably turn on my radio right now. '60s. Okay, y'all hear my radio right now. Yeah, when I... Oh! The heck? Sunny. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's for my accident. Alright. Yeah, that actually just... Well, yeah, so that was it. So before I end the stream, I'm going to upload the required weekly test video. Jesus. It's a lot of notifications. I'm going to upload that required weekly test thing. Yeah, I shook my phone. Let's see, August 4th. Yes, 178. 178. First required weekly test for August. Alright. Alright. So that's done. So I'm gonna end the stream here. So I will see y'all later. Stream at 6:30. So until then, enjoy the rest of I will see y'all later. Peace. See you all later for my evening stream at 6:30. Don't miss it.